What's the best MLS prank that you ever saw, or like soccer, like a good old fashioned shenanigans?
Best prank I saw was when we were in Sporting Kansas City, and they told Tim Melia, along with God, I can't remember who the other one was, but it was a rookie, that they were being like having a tryout for Dancing with the Stars. And I think one guy was in on it. I think it was Connor Hallis. He was in on it. So he was also partaking, but he knew that it was a joke. And these guys were like doing this, like, the most ridiculous dance moves, and they like filmed it and all this stuff. And they were telling him like, good, I think you might make it or whatever. And so they finally came up with the whole video clip. And then at one point they put it for the whole team to watch. And Tim Melia and co realized then that it was all a joke.
Hey guys, welcome on into Drinks with Binks, working from home edition, wasted from home if that is your poison. We have been doing this from home for about 2 months now. We all know that there's a lot going on in the world. We're staying home to stay safe, and we want to make sure that everyone knows that we're doing this for a greater cause. So in this time, we want to make sure also to bring you some fun content, to interview some awesome people around the world within sports and beyond. And I am so excited now to welcome in former American professional soccer player, now current podcast host, Benny Feilhaber. Benny, it's been a long time since I last saw you. Our worlds have changed quite a bit since then. It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Julie. I remember you interviewing me a few times by the touchline. So long time since, but we've both started doing different things now, and excited to be on the show with you.
Yeah, and ironically, what we're both doing now sort of luckily can still be going on while we're all quarantining and trying to stay safe. And I was just trying to think back. The last time I saw you was when you were called up to the U.S. men's national team for World Cup qualifier against Panama. I believe I interviewed you before that game because you were pretty shocked to be called up at that point after it had been sort of a long layoff. We're going to get into that later on in the program. I won't just jump right into some of that, the good old days. But yeah, we are now drinking on the show. And what do you have for us here today? What is your poison that you picked?
Well, I got a non-alcoholic drink, but it's a Brazilian iced tea. It's called Mate Leão, and it's a very sweet tea, acquired taste. My wife says it tastes like honey. My kids like it though, so I'll let them take a couple sips at dinner sometimes when I make it. But it's it's really big in Brazil, and it's my drink today.
Okay, awesome. Well, I was looking for some Summersby hard cider for you, and learned that because you are in Overland Park, Kansas City.
Yes.
And they don't deliver booze there, which is wild. I apologize. My thoughts and prayers to everyone involved.
You would think that I would know that, but since I'm not a big drinker and I don't get really alcohol delivered to me, I wouldn't know which states allow that or not. So I guess Kansas does not.
I wouldn't have known what the alcohol delivery is really unless I was back in Canada when I was 19 years old in college. And that was allowed, by the way. That's the legal drinking age in Canada, where we would order booze to our dorm. So we're not going to get into that during this episode. But obviously we're all ordering groceries and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, I'm glad you're not drinking. I could use a day off. I've got a little hydration liquid IV here. It's just like a Brazilian iced tea, tastes like honey. So we will be hydrating and having a good time chatting. So Benny, since you retired, not even a couple months ago at this point, the whole world's changed. Just before we get into the retirement and all that kind of stuff, what's your daily life like right now? What have you been up to? How's the family doing? Just give me an update.
Yeah, it's a lot of being a parent, and as much as that sounds, I think, natural to a lot of people, or normal, I guess, it's anything but. It's the kids are all under the age of 6. So I have a 5, a 4, and a 1-year-old.
Wow.
And both the 5 and the 4 used to go to preschool. The 5-year-old was going kindergarten at this private preschool. And so the painful part of it is that there is no, Zoom calls from the public teachers to, keep them busy for a couple hours a day. And we are literally, me and my wife, having to entertain them for 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so sometimes I look at my wife, I'm like, I'm losing it. And am I being a really bad parent right now? I'm about to like ship them off to a boarding school if we can, somewhere in, wherever, maybe New Zealand. I think they don't have it as bad as, most of the other countries in the world, but it is very tough. It is hard. And I've told people that it is very similar. Well, I'm not bipolar and I don't know a lot about bipolar people, but it is similar, I'm imagining, to that, because there's days that is the best day in the world and you love your kids and you want to play with them and everybody's having fun. And then there's days where they just, drive you up the wall and all you want to do is just run out the front door and disappear forever. So it's a tough mental test for me and my wife. Either one or the other.
There's no real in between, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's challenging, especially for so many kids under the age of 6, and the fact that you can't really go out and you're trying to explain to them, we can't really do the things that we normally did. And Peter Burns, who works at ESPN, had a funny tweet sort of in that same vein of, sometimes I want to ship my child off to the transfer portal and then she'll be like, Daddy, hold my hand. And you're like, wow, that's a really sweet moment. So
exactly.
I can only imagine, you probably now know what it's like to feel like Peter Vermees, right? Having to babysit a number of
I envy Peter Vermees at this point. Trust me. What I'm doing is more difficult than, coaching a soccer team. So, it's like you said, it's a lot of highs and lows, but it's obviously rewarding, and we're trying to do the best that we can for our kids. So, it's fun spending time with them, but at the same time, you're really anxious for school to start back up, to get them back into the real world with other kids and teachers that know how to do this much better than I do.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I wouldn't want to be trying to shape a life and teaching them like math and things that would be wrong for me to do. But before we go to break, let's cheers. We got our Brazilian iced tea and we got our liquid IV. What are we toasting to today, Benny?
The end of quarantine.
Yeah, the imminent end, the elusive imminent end of quarantine, whatever that may be. Yes. All right, bottoms up. And I found it interesting to know that you settled in Kansas City because you've lived all over the world. I mean, you have such an interesting resume of places you've lived, places you've played, and to find yourself, I know you spent many years with Sporting KC, but to find yourself sort of like settled in Kansas City, what is it about Kansas City that really has been home for you?
Well, off the field, I've loved my life here. I'm a homebody. I don't like, the limelight and cities and all these kind of things that you can do in big cities. And so my life here was simple. Obviously, money goes a much further way here than it does on the coasts, especially in California. And so, it's been a great 5+ years now in Kansas City. And so, after I retired, as much as I was kind of waiting to see what would happen before, quarantine, started occurring in terms of what I would find to do as a job after retiring from playing. We knew that this was the place where we were going to settle until something else happened. So that this is where we are right now. I think we're pretty, thankful that we're in Kansas City during this pandemic because there's more space here. There's fewer people. There's, less of a worry than in some other places.
Yeah, I think I'm in literally the exact opposite of where you are now in Manhattan. Yes. And we're saying I could be in any room. I'm in a studio apartment in Manhattan spending, I can't even say, it's so ridiculous, any room in the entire world at this point because you can't go outside. But we got to go to break. We have a whole lot more to come with Benny Feilhaber on Drinks with Binks. Guys, stay tuned.
Hey guys, welcome back to Drinks with Binks. I'm Julie Stewart Binks, and we are joined today by former American professional soccer player, played all over the world and for the U.S. men's national team, now podcast host. We got Benny Feilhaber in the house. We are sipping on some Brazilian iced tea. We're getting hydrated at this moment. And Benny, you would be getting hydrated a lot if you were playing. You decided to retire to hang them up a couple months ago. What was sort of the defining moment where you realized, okay, this is it, I think I'm done? Or were there a series of moments that led to that point?
There was a series of moments, but yeah, there was definitely, a point in time where I thought, this is probably it. And but it wasn't, it was definitely developing over time. So at the end of last season, I thought in my head, well, let me go back a little bit further. At the beginning of last season, I thought this could be my last year. And during the year didn't go well, didn't do well in Colorado, moved to Kansas City, didn't do as well as I hoped that we would have done. And so at the end of the year, I thought, I think I can play for another year. And if it's for the right team, I'd like to do that to kind of end on a better note. It was kind of a sour note where the year didn't go well. And so, I really wanted to play for Kansas City again, if that was possible. And the other team that I would have interest is LAFC. Those are the two teams that I would have definitely gone to for a pay cut and played there for one more season and kind of, been whether it's a depth player, off the bench, whatever. I wanted to do that, to play for one more year. In terms of other places, there were a couple other places that I might have thought of, but if some team showed interest that I didn't really want to go to, it would have eventually been a financial decision, Mm-hmm. And so towards February, I saw that there was maybe, one team, two teams here interested, not really that I wanted to go to. And I saw that the money wasn't going to be where I needed to be. So I thought, okay, well, I'm pretty excited about what's next. I've thought about coaching. I've thought about going into like a player personnel role within a team. I've thought about media. And so those are really the three avenues that I've thought of. And I felt like I was excited about that more so than really trying to grind out another year somewhere where I didn't really want to be and that kind of thing. And so it felt right. And, that's when I made my decision.
You mentioned earlier, though, that you sort of hoped to maybe end on some kind of high note in a way, like let it, all go out and sort of, hey, boom, that's my career. Right. Is there any kind of feeling of like, darn, I wish that I'd had that?
Not really. I don't look back and say, I mean, in a perfect world, yeah, you would have you would have wanted to win, a championship as your last year. And there's a few people that are able to say that they did that, but it's rare. And so, yeah, I don't look back and regret it in any way. I think maybe I would have a little bit more had LAFC won last year after I left. But since they didn't, there was nothing to really regret as much. But in terms of me personally, yeah, it wasn't one of those where I really felt like it was just disastrous to have a down year on my last year. I still look back so fondly at my time at LAFC, at Sporting Kansas City, and a lot of the other clubs that I played for. And so yeah, really really happy with what I did, and more looking forward to and happier about what the future brings.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of that future right now, I'm going to get into that in 1 second, but the fact is you retired, and then, I mean, we're weeks into MLS season and everything was postponed. What's it like watching that now as a retired player, just seeing the whole world change, and the fact that if you had played another season, who knows if you would have ever even stepped on the pitch?
Yeah, that's right. It's crazy. I mean, I look at it in two different, lenses. One is as a fan, I want to watch games. I want to have, something to look forward to on the weekend. Thankfully this weekend we have Bundesliga coming back, so that'll be something that a lot of people will be watching. But I mean, we want to see the American sports back, MLS, NBA, baseball. Obviously I'm a big football fan too, so hopefully the season doesn't, get canceled or delayed once football season comes around. But we want to see those back, and that's disappointing, but we understand, that there's something bigger that we have to focus on right now. And then the other lens that I look at is, I was very excited about my future, and right now everything's on pause. You're not going to be able to get a job, within the league, within organizations. And so that was something that I always thought of. I see a lot of guys that retire without really knowing what they want to do. And I was really excited about that next prospect. And I knew what I wanted to do, but now it's like, you got to wait it out anyways, and so it's disappointing to, not have that start right away. But like I said, it's something that we all have to deal with during this time.
Right. And you had said a couple different things you wanted to do, but right there you said you knew what you wanted to do. What is it that you wanted to do once you hung them up?
Well, the first thing that I wanted to do is get my coaching licenses. So I actually started my B license here in Kansas City, and it's a lot of work. I can't, I think I underestimated how much work it is. And so the first there's 3 weeks of the actual camp, and you do a bunch of homework assignments in between the weeks. And I did the first week and the homework assignments that lead up to the second week. And the whole coaching course has been canceled now. And so we're trying to find out if we can maintain some of the work that we've done, if we can start, on the second week, if we can keep some of our assignments, because it's a lot of work. And so right now we're waiting on that and that decision. But that was what I had started doing. I was speaking with Peter Vermes, with potentially staying with Sporting Kansas City in some capacity. What that would have been, I don't know yet. It was kind of in conversation mode still. So that'll have to, wait till once we get back. And I mean, I have other contacts, obviously I have really good relationship with Bob at LAFC. I know guys around the league and coaches and people and, front office positions. So, in that sense, I was starting to see what was available, but, what I'm going to do, I don't know yet. I'd like to find out what I'm good at, what I'd enjoy. There's no doubt that it'll be within soccer. I'm going to, I love the sport more than anything. And so it's not even one of those questions where I don't know what else to do. I don't have anything else to do. It's that I really want to be in this realm. And so we'll see what happens down the road. But, I was very excited, as you can tell, about the things that, were coming up down the road.
Yeah, well, that, would be very fascinating to work with potentially Peter Vermes or Bob Bradley. And you have so many different options that you can do. You mentioned coaching, but also media. And I want to get into your podcast that you have, the BSI podcast. But we have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more with Benny Feilhaber on Drinks with Binks. Hey guys, welcome back to Drinks with Binks with Benny Feilhaber. We are sipping on some Brazilian iced tea here, non-alcoholic. We are feeling very good today. And Benny, you have a new awesome project that you're doing since retiring, the BSI podcast, the Benny, Sal, and Ike podcast, a couple of good old guys from the Kansas City days. And you guys know each other well. First of all, how did the idea come to fruition for you to decide to get into the media podcast world?
Well, I guess I got to throw it all the way back to when we started the Benny Feilhaber show in Kansas City. I don't know if you guys remember that,
yes,
but me and Sal started that. And actually an intern from Kansas City was the one that came up to me with the idea of an audio diary or video diary maybe. And I said, okay, well, let's change some aspects of that. And we ended up with the Benny Feilhaber show. And that was a lot of fun. I think a lot of the, fans in Kansas City enjoyed it. So me and Sal kind of had that connection. And so we talked about maybe we should start a podcast at some point. And it kind of, was a conversation that we had throughout the years. And then when I came back to Kansas City last year, I thought to Sal, hey, maybe this is our chance. We'll get some of those fans back from the Benny Feilhaber show and let's do it. So we started, at that point, we came up with the funny name of BS, the podcast at first. But then Ike followed, I think on the third, he was our second guest, and then he was part of a host starting on the third episode, and so we included the I in there for him starting in the second season. But it's been a lot of fun, and I think we've gotten better at it. We've gotten some pretty cool guests to open up and had some funny stories, so it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I noticed. You had Alan Gordon, of course, and Jovan Karofsky, Rob Stone from Fox, like a ton of big names in soccer. And so you guys knew each other well from on the pitch. Now that you're sort of doing this show in retirement for you, how has your relationship evolved?
Well, with Ike, it's like I'm really good friends with Ike. So me and him pretty much text every day, whether it's something that we see on Twitter that's funny and we comment about it, or some stories that's going on in MLS or whatever. I'll tell him make sure you don't have 3 kids during quarantining. But anyways, we talk all the time about all kinds of stuff. Me and Sal, we went to UCLA. He came the year I left. So we played together 1 year in Kansas City. So it's almost like we know each other so well, but we never have really been together for long periods of time. But yeah, me and Sal are really good together as well. I don't think I'm as close with Sal in terms of friendship as Ike, but yeah, same thing. You know, I'll talk to Sal. Last year when I was playing, he was a real estate agent, so I would crush him on that during the podcast, thinking like, "What are you doing?" But now he's playing, and I'm retired doing nothing, so he makes fun of me on that end. So we've got a really good relationship in that sense. So yeah, it's a lot of fun doing it with those guys.
Yeah, you can kind of dish the dirt on each other. Now, what kind of like broadcast influences do you think that you sort of bring into play now that you're doing this? Because you've clearly consumed a lot of sports media and interacted with a lot of broadcasters.
Yeah, so I mean, I thankfully, you know, Shaw at FS1, he's a producer there. He's kind of helped me out, giving me opportunities here and there to do, you know, some studio analyst work, and I even did some practice color commentary with Keith Costigan, which was pretty fun. Yeah, so I've had, you know, just dipped my toes in that water and kind of found out what it's like. And so it's exciting to kind of, you know, do our own show. I really don't know if I'm any good at it. You know, I hear a lot of positives, but sometimes I feel like people are being nice, but it's fun, you know? And so I think that's the whole thing. It doesn't have to be the greatest production, but as long as we get, you know, fun guests that want to tell stories, like you said, Alan Gordon, you know, Rob Stone, Mike Grella, there's guys that just like come on and tell really good stories. And it's like we're just on, you know, Skype or a Zoom call and just talking with the guys, having a beer or whatever it is. And so it's a lot of fun. And I think that's what it's been mostly about for us.
Yeah, and people love seeing that kind of personality, especially from players that they don't get to interact with and have that relationship. And you mentioned that you were in the booth for an MLS game last year. And tell me, you mentioned it to me during the commercial break, but just the realization and sort of the learning curve instantly of being in that position.
Yeah, so I was actually not in the booth. We were actually on the field while we did it. So we were doing, it was Rob Stone, myself, Mo Adu, and Alexi Lalas. There was the four there. And it was during the Eastern Conference Finals. And I just remember the first time that I had to talk. So you know how it is. Like people are in your ear telling you when you're about to go or who's going to talk next or whatever. And so that's a little bit of a process to get used to. But once I knew it was my turn to talk, I remember Rob, like, you know, threw it to me. And I started and I already knew what I wanted to say, which is for me a terrible idea. It's like it's better when it just comes natural. So it's like I'm almost trying to memorize what I'm going to say. And I just like went for a loop talking about, I don't know what. I said like the same words 6 times. People on TV, if they were paying attention, was probably thinking, you know, what is this guy talking about? And so, and after that, I thought in my head, you know, I got to just relax. Let me just talk soccer. You know, I know what this game is. I know what it looks like. Let me just say the things that I know and stop trying to find smart words and all that kind of thing. And so after that, I settled down. I think I sounded better, I hope, than the first, the bit that I said at first, but it was, yeah, it's a learning experience. And I'll remember what Rob Stone told me, that the biggest thing that you have to do is go listen to yourself and be a self-critic, and you'll completely, you know, continue to improve from there on out.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's you're hard on yourself when you first do it, but when you're trying to talk soccer on national TV in 20 seconds, anyone would have difficulty with that, even if you've played it your entire life. But also a reminder, it's never as bad as it feels. It's never also as good as it feels either, because I know sometimes you're like, man, I knocked it out of the park. You go back and watch, you're like, it was okay, I guess. But that's
I have a really hard time. I have a really hard time going back and looking at myself. Even just like hearing my voice, I'm like cringing at, you know, it's like, oh God, no, what am I doing? But,
it's a weird, insecure feeling. I'll watch this show with my friends, my boyfriend, I'm like, no, like you just don't want to watch it, but it's good. You got to improve. All right, guys, we'll be back with more Benny Feilhaber on Drinks with Binks. Don't go anywhere. Hey guys, welcome back to Drinks with Binks with Benny Feilhaber. You remember him from The Pitch, MLS, EPL, Bundesliga, and beyond, of course, for the U.S. men's national team. Now with his own podcast, BSI Podcast. And what a perfect way to segue into what we were discussing in the break was broadcasters broadcasting, and the fact that the league is potentially maybe going to come back. We're not necessarily sure, but you're not playing anymore. Number of your, former teammates are all trying to figure out what's going on. If you were still playing, how would you feel about what's going on in the world? The layoff, being quarantined.
I mean, I think I'd feel similar to how I feel now. I think it's kind of a feeling of a little bit of helplessness, but at the same time, you understand that there's bigger aspects here than sports. And I know for sure that I would want to get back on the field. Like I said before, I love the game, and especially if it was being my last year, if I knew it was going to be my last year this year and I was playing, I wouldn't want it to end like this. And so I would be very excited to try and get back on the field in some way that's safe and fair, obviously for the players as well. But yeah, it's a situation it's impossible to predict. So it's tough to kind of, maneuver your way through this right now.
Mm-hmm. What kind of conversations have you had with former teammates or players in the league just about like what they're going through right now?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I spoke to Ike a lot. Sal's playing at a USL level, so he's going through it in some respect as well, similar to what Ike and MLS guys are going through. And I know they're having conversations with the owners, with the league, with the Players Association, trying to figure out what's the safest way to come back, if there is a way that's safe enough that they're not going to feel they're in harm's way in any way. Obviously there's the money aspect, but I think that's secondary at this point with how much, the economy's taking a hit. A lot of people, are in far worse situations than, professional athletes. So I think that's secondary, but it's obviously going to be an issue that needs to be visited as well. And so, that's their mindset. They don't really know, I think that's the main thing. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. I think even if you ask like owners, they don't know exactly what states are going to open, what tests will be available. And so all those kind of things go into an unknown pot where you just kind of have to wait and see. You can plan, but anything could change also from here till June till the end of the year. So.
Right. And you bring up a lot of good points there. Every player wants to be able to get back on the pitch and be able to, of course, make money, but also we're dealing with something we've never dealt with before and don't want to put lives at risk just to get back and do this thing that maybe we shouldn't be doing at this moment. There's been reports that MLS is thinking about having all of the teams go to Orlando and in the summer and sort of play out the season in that regard. We're still figuring out, even just as people that aren't athletes, like what this means for our daily lives going forward. If you were playing, like how would you feel about the prospect of potentially starting up in like leaving your home for 3 to 4 months and starting up soon?
Yeah, I think in terms of playing the game, I would be excited about it. In terms of leaving my family for, I don't know if it's going to be 3 to 4 months. I heard it was, maybe like a 2-3 month process where it's like 2 months of playing and maybe, a month or a little bit less of like a preseason, but regardless, a long time away from your family. And as much as I can say right now, that would be a little bit like a vacation right now for me. That's, a week or 2 weeks down the road, you're itching to get back. And so it's tough, but I do think that if there's a way to do it safely, for me personally, if there's a way to do it safely and you're away from your family for 2-3 months and you know that your family is going to be all right as well with their activities without your help, then to me, it's like, it's your job, you go there and you do it. And so is it perfect? No, but these are situations that are unprecedented. And so for me, I would be willing to do that if, like I said, it was under the right circumstances.
Right. Now, a number of jobs and industries are still figuring out when it's safe for them to open up. Seeing some of the reaction of EPL players or players around Europe, for instance, Danny Rose being, kind of pretty like emotional about the fact that why are we as soccer players having to be sort of the ones to put ourselves at risk to be the moral to help support the national morale of the country. What do you think about sort of like athletes being almost like the guinea pigs of like, let's see how this works. Like we want to open this up because we want to give something to fans and we want to generate revenue, but these players could easily contract the virus and get sick, and their families could get sick at the same time too.
Yeah, that's why I think that first of all, there shouldn't be anybody that are guinea pigs, at this point. I think that the most important thing is to try and make sure that it's as safe as possible. So like, that's why I'm saying, for me, I would love to get back out and play if I know that they're the right things in place in terms of me being tested, other players being tested, a good scheme as to keeping us away from people that aren't being tested. Because I know if they're going to Orlando, they're going to have to stay in hotels, and the people that you encounter in hotels, are they, either being tested or staying far away enough? Are there, ways to maintain that security for those players? If there's a legit way to, keep people safe, then I think it's fine. But in terms of using, athletes as guinea pigs, no, that's obviously not a good way to go about it. We're not going to just throw people into the public and see if they get sick or if they don't get sick, and then we decide, whether everybody else wants to come out as well. So, that's probably not the right way to do it.
Yeah, I'm curious how the reporting of, anyone infected with the virus would go, because in soccer, we sometimes know clubs and teams don't necessarily disclose when a head injury happens or a substitution in that regard. I'd be shocked if some clubs didn't want their star striker to be out for a match if they were potentially around someone who had COVID. There's all these other different sort of layers in that regard. How do you feel about the idea of, let's take this to Europe right now, a number of clubs on the bubble of relegation? Should relegation exist in this climate when there's so many things that are out of these clubs' control, especially if matches are played at neutral sites?
Yeah, I think that has to stay. You can't, first of all, you always have to see the flip side as well, right? So there's teams in the second division that are promoting that have had good years and deserve to promote. And in Europe, almost every league, you've played the vast majority of the season. And so if you're a team like, I don't even know where Aston Villa sits, but I know they were one of the teams saying that, this shouldn't count or whatever. Imagine Liverpool on the opposite end. There's 9 games left. They're 25 points ahead. So they literally would have to lose every game, and whoever's in second place have to win every game so they don't get crowned the champions. So I think that they're going to eventually play the games, and whether it be in a neutral site or not, people are going to have to deal with, with what's going on, because it's not fair. It'd be more unfair to nix the entire season at this point than to play out the rest of the season in, an uncomfortable circumstance.
Right. Okay. Well, very interesting things, Benny. Perfect media guy right now. Got some great opinions on some big topics around the world. We've got a whole lot more to come with Benny Feilhaber, guys. Don't go anywhere on Drinks with Binks. Hey guys, welcome on back to Drinks with Binks. We're sipping on a little Brazilian iced tea with the one and only Benny Feilhaber, former American professional soccer player, played for the U.S. men's national team, now doing some media and figuring out maybe might get back into some coaching when all is said and done. And we want to talk about, your career has been all over the world. You've played in so many different countries. You've played for so many different teams. If you could go back to one moment in time and be able to relive it, what would it be?
I think I'd have to go back and relive the Gold Cup 2007. In terms of soccer, that's like the peak of my career. If you want to put it to one specific moment, scoring that goal in the finals against Mexico, a goal that's a difficult goal to score.
Yes.
And in a stadium that was completely sold out, probably 90% plus Mexican fans, and being able to score that goal and help us win a trophy. I think that was the most special moment for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm sure that gives you shivers even just thinking back to something like that. Do you, I mean, not you, but like if you play for the US, like, do you hate Mexico? Is it like, is it sort of passed down? It's like in your blood?
I mean, you have good rivalries with them. I think it's the same thing like with Kansas City and Salt Lake, or LAFC and Galaxy. I wouldn't say that I hate anybody. I'm definitely not, I love a good rivalry because it brings me up. It makes me excited for the game. I think the more motivated I get, the better I play. And so that's always a positive for me, but I don't think I'd ever say that I hate any of the, players on an opposing rival team.
That what you said there kind of reminds me of the Michael Jordan sort of really having those rivalries we've seen with The Last Dance. Who is someone that you played against in MLS that would get you up like that you're like, oh man, I got to shut this guy down, or like, I want to almost go above and beyond to make sure this guy has an awful game?
Well, I would say that my biggest rival in MLS was Salt Lake in general. So, everybody wants to say me and Kyle Beckerman, which we've had some feuds on and off the field. And so, he's a guy that was always fun to go up against. But more of like a guy that I really liked playing against, that I consider a pretty close friend, is Dax. He's always a guy that usually got the best of me. Like, he always seemed to know, where I was going to dribble, where I wanted to pass. He'd put his body in the right position and place. And so I remember thinking every time I played against him, like, I want to make sure that I do better than I did last time. And it was tough. Dax was a really tough competitor and a good guy to go up against.
Mm-hmm. Also another underrated player that I believe was passed over by a one Jurgen Klinsmann. Now, you did mention a lot of people over. Yeah, he did, right? You'd question his coaching techniques, I'm sure, if one was in that moment. But just tracking back to one quick thing, you said Kyle Beckerman, you guys had, this rivalry on and off the pitch. What was it like off?
So the one thing that we had off the field, well, I guess it was on the field, but again, I don't tell this story unless I'm with Kyle because it's not fair for it to be one-sided. But we had some beef one time on the national team in a January camp. And, he did something that, I don't think a teammate should ever do. And so if you want to bring me and him on the show, we could both tell our
that's a tease. Can you give me the realm of which it is? We all,
we were playing against each other in an inter squad game. And so something happened where, a teammate shouldn't do that to another teammate, in my opinion, but I'm sure
studs up.
No studs up, but it wasn't the best tackle, but he'd have to come on the show. And like, I won't even tell this on BSI, the podcast, because it's not fair to have a one-sided story. And so if he ever comes on this show or any show with me, we can both tell that story. And for me, I'm good to squash it at this point, but it was something that definitely, stayed with me throughout my playing career.
Interesting. Okay. Well, very political and noble of you not to tell us all the details of this seemingly very, very good story about you and Kyle Beckerman, which I'm very excited to find out at the end of this. But moving on just quickly, because I want to get through a couple of these interesting ones. What's the best MLS prank that you ever saw, or like soccer, like a good old fashioned shenanigans?
Best prank I saw was when we were in Sporting Kansas City, and they told Tim Melia, along with, I can't remember who the other one was, but it was a rookie, that they were like having a tryout for Dancing with the Stars. And I think one guy was in on it. I think it was Connor Hallis. He was in on it. So he was also partaking, but he knew that it was a joke. And these guys were like doing this, like, the most ridiculous dance moves. And they like filmed it and all this stuff. And they were telling him like, good, I think you might make it or whatever. And so they finally came up with the whole video clip. And then at one point they put it for the whole team to watch. And Tim Melia and co realized then that it was all a joke.
Wow, that's like doing the extra work for the prank. I love that everyone went above and beyond. So how was Tim as a dancer?
I think he's terrible. I don't remember very much, but I'm pretty sure Tim's a terrible dancer. That I would guess that he's terrible with how, stiff, and he's like the Hulk. And so he can't possibly be a good dancer, but that the pranks were always very well articulated because Rob Thompson, if you know Robo, he's he loves, doing it the right way. And he's a good guy for a prank.
Yes, Rob Thompson, communications expert extraordinaire for Sporting Kansas City.
There's no one he doesn't know.
Many times while I tried to be very annoying on the sideline. Also, I always found Sporting Kansas City to go above and beyond. And I remember I don't know if you were there this year. I don't think, maybe you were not, but I was presented with a cake on my birthday by Ike Opara. Actually was holding it at training, which was really sort of a weird moment, but also an amazing moment that I'll never forget. But lots of great memories on the pitch. We got to take a timeout, but we'll be back with more Benny Feilhaber on Drinks with Binks. Hey guys, welcome back to Drinks with Binks with former American professional soccer player Benny Feilhaber, current media mogul in the making. And we have been having a lot of fun on Drinks with Binks. And I got to ask you about your time with the U.S. men's national team. First and foremost, we've seen a real difficult time for the U.S., for the men, and not qualifying for the last World Cup. What's the problem? Now that you've been on the inside, you're on the outside, how do you fix it?
Yeah, well, I think the present term problem is that we don't have too many guys. Well, first, we're not playing any games, so it's hard to, improve. Second, I think there was a long time there where we didn't have a coach. We had Dave Sarachan as a coach, but it was an interim coach. Nobody knew exactly what would happen. And during that whole time, and I think still now, there's been a shift because we missed a World Cup where we're trying to, keep those young players, give them as much experience as possible. And I think that could prove, beneficial down the road. But at the same time, there's not those veteran guys that have been there and done it and been successful to kind of help the guys, improve and become, who they can become. And so I remember when I first came in, there was maybe, a handful max of guys my age trying to break into the national team. And there was like 15, 20 guys that were the Landons, the Beasleys, Brian Ching, Bocanegra, Gooch. You can go on and on and on with guys that were solidified on the national team and could help you become part of that team, and become the best version of yourself. And right now we don't have that. Hopefully, the fact that we're getting that experience will outweigh that in the future. But I think that's one of the difficulties right now with the team.
Right. Yeah. And then you almost miss a generation of players then that could potentially be coming up that didn't see the U.S. in the World Cup at that point. There's one person at the helm of the U.S. not making the last World Cup, and that was Jurgen Klinsmann, manager who was fired midway through qualifying, and someone that you had somewhat of a tumultuous relationship with because he never called you in for 3 years, and then you came back in 2017. He was at Hertha Berlin and then is not there anymore. Do you feel vindicated in some of the criticisms you've had publicly about him now that really the rest of the world has sort of seen that too?
Vindicated, no, because I would much rather have been part of that group. In terms of things that I say, I'll never say something because I don't like what someone's doing. I'll say it because I believe it. And I've never thought, I was with Jurgen for, 3 January camps, and I was there firsthand and was able to see that tactically he was not a good coach. He doesn't see the game well. He doesn't get people organized the right way. He doesn't allow the players to really, know what their responsibilities are. And at the national team level, that's almost, multiplied the importance of it because you're only with guys for a limited amount of time. So it's not like, a Michael Bradley and a Christian Pulisic or whoever that play together in the midfield or as 2 center backs. They don't play together every day, as they do in the club level. So it's very important to get guys, in knowing what the responsibilities are, and being able to get them, in a smart formation where everybody knows their responsibilities. And so I think that was one thing that he lacked. He was always a guy that was very good at motivationally getting people going. But I think at some point that's not enough, and so, for me, I don't think he, 1, called all the right guys up, and 2, he didn't set up all the guys to succeed at various times during his tenure.
What would we as fans or broadcasters not understand or not know about Jurgen, having not been inside the locker rooms with him?
Well, in my short time with him, his main tactical conversation would be to go out there and beat your individual battles, which is not a technical, approach. That's more of a mental approach, if anything. His talks would be go out, have fun, win your individual battles, and that'll lead to success, which to me is, yeah, you can say that, but you need to give some kind of base, so people kind of know, what they really need to do, as opposed to just like, rah kind of thing that I think only goes so far. So that's something that obviously people that were on the outside, didn't get to see. Sometimes incredibly the players, make it work, and sometimes it doesn't, but eventually after after time, it reveals itself more and more. And so I think that was, something that kind of revealed itself with Jürgen.
Now we're running out of time here, but I have to ask you this. You are part of the U.S. men's national team. The U.S. women just lost their equal pay fight with U.S. soccer. They will likely appeal it. What's that like from your vantage point?
So I'm a very math kind of guy. And so I think that it depends on the numbers. And honestly, I've read so many different kinds of numbers that I don't even know what to believe in. But I think it's tough, because you can say like, the women accepted a CBA deal that, now they want the other deal, but at the same time, were they pushed in kind of into a corner where there's some things that you can't give up as a mother of children that you need, that health insurance, you need, the maternal leave. And there's so many things that like, as male athletes, a lot of times we don't have to think about. And so they have to, put importance on that. And so, that's such a tough one for me. I hope that they can find something that is beneficial for them, and obviously for U.S. soccer, so they get back to playing and hopefully not have some kind of strike. But yeah, it's a tough one I just don't feel like I have enough information to really say, my guess is both sides need to kind of find a little bit of a compromise. No one is going to get everything they want, but at the same time, I hope that they do find that, so that we can, watch them play, because they're, the best women soccer players in the world, the best team in the world, really, over the course of the last like 10 years or so. So hopefully they can, find some kind of compromise there.
Yes, definitely. Very interesting perspective from someone who's obviously worked with U.S. soccer. Okay, guys, we got to go. I'm being yelled at by my producers. We'll come back after this on Drinks with Binks. Well, guys, we've had an awesome time on Drinks with Binks with former American professional soccer player Benny Feilhaber, and we've been getting all the good, dirty deets on everyone in soccer. So this has been great. Betty, you got a podcast, BSI podcast. When is that dropping next? What can we expect?
I actually think we're dropping our next episode tomorrow morning, and we had an interview with Luis Robles. It was actually a really good one. If you're a Red Bull fan, you'll really want to tune into this one. There were some good bits there. But yeah, we usually drop it on Thursday morning, so check into that. And it's been a lot of fun. So BSI, the podcast. Thanks.
Awesome. So yes, that podcast will be out when this show airs on Friday night. Luis Robles, as always, I find a very inspirational, powerful speaker. So I'm sure that that's nothing but interesting. And one quick message to MLS fans out there who are anxiously awaiting to see their clubs come back.
So a message to myself, really, but hang in there. I'm sure that this will blow by, and hopefully we'll all be better for it. But I'm anxiously waiting the sports to come back, and we'll stick together until then. And I'm done with my drink. So
yes, well, it looks like you've done a great job on Drinks with Binks. Thank you so much for coming on here. That was Benny Feilhaber. Make sure you guys also follow us on @Fubo Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. You can listen to this as a podcast on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your podcasts, as well as see the full episode on YouTube after this airs on Fubo Sports. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week, still in quarantine, I'm sure. Bottoms up.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching Drinks with Binks and all of our awesome content here at Fubo Sports. We know that you're staying home to stay safe. We're working from home to work safe, and we've still been able to have amazing interviews. So you want to subscribe to Fubo Sports on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Better yet, hit that subscribe button and have a shot of tequila at the same time, because we're drinking from home and we're having awesome conversations with athletes, celebrities, broadcasters, because they're all in the same boat.